Here's a quick little update on the OpenGL C++ program I'm working on. Just playing around with it and seeing how things work and learning C++ at the same time. I'm by no means an expert at it, but I'm getting better and better. Hopefully I can clean my code up a little bit better as well, make it more efficient. So I've been working on. I decided to implement sectors within the world. That way, if I am near an object and say I want to shoot something through it, I don't want that object to. I want to pick the nearest object to me, and to do that, I would have to search all the objects within the world, um, or do some other calculations that find the closest object and then ignore the other ones, but you'd still have to check a lot of other objects in that case. So I felt like it was a really good idea to split the world up into sectors. They're not instances, they're just sectors that when I create a uh, when I create an object, I store its vertex data, its position, and I'll store the sector position as well. And I could keep track of which sector I'm currently in and only search that sector for the things nearest to me that matter. And I can increase the sector to a very large size, small size, whatever. But right now, uh, I'll show you what that is currently looking like. And right now I have a kind of a coordinate system set up. When I move into each sector, it highlights sector and makes lines. So I know which sector I'm in and making sure that it's working. And here it is. And so I drew a whole bunch of points to begin with using an algorithm, and I based uh, the um, the distance is actually you have to define the distance uh, between each point. And what I have is one on the left, one on the right, one above, one below, one. So basically one on every axis. And then I move the points along in a fashion in which allows me to calculate the distance between a point and myself, and determine whether or not I'm out of that sector or in that sector just by doing some vector subtraction. I'm not entirely sure if this is like it could probably be more efficient. The way I'm calculating it, what I do is I run through all everything, or I can either set my position at a starting position like 0, like that would be my first uh, like array. That would be my first array. It would be 0, and then I could set that, and I'm always gonna come up in the origin right here, and I'm gonna start here. And that way, I know where I am, and I don't have to do a lot of calculations. Um, I think I have it set up similar to like that, but I think it does right now. It might be searching for the first initialization. And so let's go and see if this works. So I'm moving along this sector. So the sector is 15 by 15, and you could define this to anything you want. You can make it smaller, bigger, but 15 by 15 is pretty good size. A lot of things can happen in a 15 by 15 area. And so I'll go outside, and as soon as I move past this point, it should move the sector to the next sector. It only does that when I release the key or press a key, though. That way, if I'm moving, it's not always doing the calculations because, I don't want it to be always calculating or doing vector subtraction because it just uses a lot of memory. Just using this, implementing this, and then putting my two spheres in the world, I'm running at 68 uh, megabytes um, per second, which is quite a bit. I mean, for this isn't much. So I think that has a lot to do with processing. I'm storing things in memory when I could be clearing them. And I am doing a lot of quadratic equations and such as well. But actually, I'm not doing those actually. I think it's the spheres that are mainly taking up the memory right now, because those spheres have a lot of points in them right now and textured and everything. It's not very efficient and just playing around with. The main reason why I wanted to get the the why I was influenced by the sectors like these is that I could keep track of objects better and I could search for objects rather than looking in the whole world. I can look in this sector to the objects closest to me. And if I can't find what I'm looking for in that sector, I'll move to the next sector over, um, or around me, if you will. And I was thinking about doing it in spheres, but because it's easier to calculate, the radius. If you pass the radius, it's always the same radius all the way around. Whereas, this is set up to be uh, well, it's a shape of a diamond, um, but it has the the what am I trying to say? It's shaped like a cube, and but the vertices are like a diamond. So I guess that's kind of weird, but whatever. And there are invisible planes here. So as soon as you cross the plane, it switches over to the next point sector. Yep. So looks like a bunch of stars out there right now. Yeah, those are just all points. They're going to be made invisible. They're not going to be kept there. They're just there for kind of referencing and where I am. And you could also tell if you look over here, I have uh, which sector I'm currently in. And I'll move back to this one. I'm in sector 11. Over here is sector 6. And then, of course, 7. So it goes, I have it drawn out so it goes from the corner and then works its way towards the other end. So it's from that corner. I think it's the negative. Yeah, it starts from the negative. Is that negative? I can't remember where I am. Okay, wait. So this is right is positive, left is negative. So it starts from the positive. So it starts from the first quadrant and then works its way uh, to the. Wait, is that the first quadrant? Yeah. No, is that the first quadrant? No, that's the bottom left quadrant. I don't know anymore. Anyways, um, so yeah, that's going to be very useful for a lot of things that I foresee, especially creating and keeping track of objects and bullets and stuff like that in the future. If I make a shooter or something, play around with. I don't know. I'm going to do a lot of things. It's just fun to play around with this in general. I don't care like how quickly I make something, as long as I'm learning and I'm progressing. If I wasn't progressing, I'd probably give up and do something else. But this is what I want to do. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure if I think I showed this last time. I have a ray a ray tracer. So I'm tracing a ray into the world, and right now I only have it for sphere detection. I'm going to implement planes, and I plan to put the planes one end here and one end here, so the plane is covering an object, and then anywhere I click with the mouse, it'll shoot a ray out in the world, and I can determine whether or not it has intersected with that plane. And the good thing about uh, in relation with what I'm doing now is that what I was attempting to do was put these very close to the border here, these two spheres, and then I was going to shoot a ray through here and make sure that it intersected the first sphere in front of me rather than the sphere in the back. And because I have the view distance, or the distance in which the ray is being cast, uh, I divided it by 2, so it's not casting that far anymore. But as soon as I move up a little bit, it casts it into the other sphere. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that it doesn't do that. If there's, this sphere in front of me, I want it to hit that sphere and not this sphere. There's a couple things that I could do to fix that. One would be decreasing the ray distance in which it travels across the world. So there's a certain distance, and I can't remember how far it is, but it's pretty far. I mean, I think it's actually my viewed distance overall, like the camera direction. So yeah, if I'm in here, I don't want it to go through and hit the other sphere. I want it to go in here. And to make sure that happens, I can use the I can use these sectors to determine which object is closest to me, like really quickly, using the sectors. Because what the sectors do is narrows the search down. So if you're doing a for search from int0 to whatever, the size of your vertex data, which could be very large, you'll have multiple objects everywhere. What the sectors do is it narrows that search down like tenfold more than that probably. I haven't actually implemented it yet, but I will. And there's a lot of code to add to that because I have to change a lot of things. But I figured it's worth it, and it'll probably be worth it. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. I might look into, seeing if I can make it more efficient. But I think it's pretty efficient now. It's not always the only time it's calculating, again, is when I move and I actually press the keyboard. It's not always doing calculations if I don't, press a button or something. And most times when you're moving across the world, you're going to press some type of button. But if you're not, then it'll just take a longer time to search. Or I might have it under a time function, like if you're moving for so many seconds and it hasn't updated in so long, then update it. Or I could base it on like the run speed and do some sort of algorithm to make sure that it does it every so many milliseconds or something, or not milliseconds, but so many seconds. Probably like based on the the um, the area in which I have my sector. Oh yeah, so let's see. I haven't tried this yet, but this sector is a 30. It's a 15 by 15 cube or sector, and I can increase that by quite a bit to anything I want, really, all the way out into the world. And I'm gonna go ahead and test that. Oh, it looks like I might have a memory leak here. Went up to like 72. Hmm, slowly climbing. But I'll check that out later. Um, let's see here. So let's go up to the top here. And here we go. So I initialize it by building the sector, and I can make them any length. And what it does is divides the length in two and makes a 30 by 30, um, or a 15 by 15, which is a 30, 30 wide, 30 width, length, and height, all that. And what these numbers do is divide it into rows and columns. I don't. I haven't added a column or another column for the height yet. That's it probably wouldn't be too hard to do. I just have to mess with the code a little. But just making uh, uh, 15 by 15, 5 by 5, 5 rows and 5 columns. It actually takes quite a while to do that, and then to draw it on the screen. Like you can tell that it takes a little bit of time. Um, so let's try to break it. Let's make if we don't make we can make 5 by 5. Um, do 5 by 5 and do maybe let's do 20 and 20. Yeah, I guess it won't break it, but we'll try that in a second. Just want to see if this works. See how it loads here. It takes quite a while to render all those things, and I'm not even sure if it's gonna render. We'll find out. Maybe I did break it. Nope, still there. Just took a long time. But I think it's because it's drawing all of those points and then rendering them to the screen. Whereas I don't have to actually do that when I implement the code, because this is just for a visual effect to make sure that everything is working correctly. And if I know everything is working correctly, and when I move to a different sector, that it jumps to that sector, then I know that it's working correctly. So then I can keep this almost like a developing tool, if you will. That way I can visually see, where maybe a bug lies or maybe something's not drawing correctly. Like this point right here should actually be green, and that point too. I'm not sure why that is. I think it's just because there's so many different things, and when I draw a line through this, it's like screwing with it somehow. I'm not entirely sure why it's doing that. Um, that one did it too. So those are the types of things, but I guess the drawing doesn't really matter, because it's not gonna actually be there when I'm done. But as long as I know it's working, and I could just go on forever, and it just moves me to sector to sector. Yeah. And again, I don't have the height yet, so I didn't build the layers on top of layers. Oh my god, that would be crazy. Look at trying to render all those points. Eh, stepped into a sector. Alright, let's make... what's a good sector size? We could do like maybe 50. Oh, that would take a long time. Yeah, because that almost broke it. 50. Let's only do 10 this time. That's actually quite a bit. That's 25 by 25, 10 rows, 10 columns. Ah, didn't take long at all. I think it's because the uh, the 50, um, that it increased it by 25 by 25, because what that does is my view distance, it's past my view distance, so it doesn't have to render all those things until I actually like move into them, whereas the other one was rendering like every single thing in front of me. So that's why this one didn't take so long. But yeah, everything still works. I actually haven't tried this yet, and that's a good thing because it's working. And now I just have to work on implementing the code um, to keep track of everything within these sectors. And yeah, I don't think I was looking into instancing, but I don't. I think this is like pretty much the same thing as instancing. You're just not like moving yourself to a different area. I suppose you're not in um, a different zone, if you will. Uh, with this, you're still in the same world. Oh, what happened there? Oh, did something happen? Oh, I didn't move into the next sector. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a big sector. 50 by 50? That's actually a really good size. I like that size. You can do a lot of things in 25 by 25, not 50 by 50. Well, um, anyways, the code for that um, is kind of interesting, and I'm thinking about changing it a bit to make it more efficient. Um, at first, I really was thinking like a whole bunch of different ways to like calculate, how am I in this sector? Which sector am I in? How do we do this? Do I use geometry? Do I use um, how do you do that? How do you find out whether or not your location is within that sector and you have an X and a Y point, an X, Y, and Z points. You have 6 points total. So you could use those points to do a lot of vector calculus or not vector calculus. Well, yeah, vector calculus. You could do a lot of vector math um, to figure out, quite a bit from 6 points and a position. So you have everything you need. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could do. And what I ended up doing was just vector subtraction. The one thing is, so let's pull it up here. So this is the code right here. So this determines whether or not I'm in a sector. And to me, it looks really small and, pretty, if you will. These if statements are kind of ugly, but they're kind of necessary. I could probably shorten it down somehow, but I'm not entirely sure. Um, Probably just combine things together. But what it does is it takes a camera position. I create a watcher and ignore the name of this. It's just called dot for now. Um, then I have a T, which I send back to my wherever I called the function. And if it's a 1, then I do something with it. If it's not, then I don't. Watcher 2 keeps track of things down here. That's actually the Watcher 2 is pretty key in this code because it determines whether or not to stop. So what I do is I loop through all the sectors and all the vertices, and I do the addition, or did I say subtract? I guess it is addition. I am tired. Okay, so I used addition, and then what I had to do is I actually had to divide it by 2 because um, when I create uh, the the sectors, I divide the size by 2. So I have a 25 by 25 rather than a 50 by 50. So that's why I have to divide that by 2. And then once I go through all those sectors, which is quite a bit if you can imagine, when you're first starting, because you have to run through this either. Actually, that was a point I was talking about earlier, is where you could set an origin or a starting zone rather than looping through all of these in the beginning. So that's something that I can clean up really easily. But once it does that, it ends up going through each one of those additions and then determining whether or not it's less than um, the position vertice, each one of the position vertices. And it determines, it then determines, well, if it is, then, set this watcher equal to 1. And if it is if it is less, whatever these statements are, less or greater than, then it sets it equal to 1, and that tells me, okay, you're nowhere near this zone. You can ignore that zone. But I don't actually have that part implemented yet, as far as, well, you can ignore this if you have so many. So I could probably, clean that up a little bit and make that smaller. And then I go here down, I do another loop. The loops are probably the longest part of this, and there's more than likely ways to set it up. But this loop is actually smaller because I did all the hard work earlier. Um, this up here, and what this does is then it searches through all of these watchers that I set based on the arrays, same arrays that I run through here for my sectors. And what that does is, if the watcher is equal to 1, then it sets the watcher 2 for this specific set or vector or sectors, and adds 1 to the value of watcher 2. So you can have a max value of 6 for watcher 2, and then if it does equal 6 or 4 or 5, then you're nowhere near that sector. So what we're looking for is when the watcher 2 equals 1. So that means when only one point in the vertice is either greater than or less than, based on these if statements right here. So only one vertice, and that one vertice is like the key, and then you can take that vertice and say, okay, well, I found where we are, and you can, what I do is just empty stuff and get rid of all the stuff that's unnecessary and return my t as 1, and then it just breaks and stops the code there. But there's a lot I can clean up here. I could probably make it way more efficient. It works. It's really good. I don't see too many issues with it yet. And I kind of just threw it together from an idea. I didn't really follow any guide or anything. It was just, hey, here's an idea, let's do this. And so I did it. And I have quite a bit of those, actually. There's actually this one idea that I have that to create vertices and then throw it into my world. What I would do is use text. So I know that some people have done this with 2D. A lot of people do this with 2D worlds. Is they create a text file and then they make the world based on that text file. And it's easy to do because you could define, what numbers are what and what letters mean what and what to put where. So why couldn't you do that with 3D? It would just be a little bit more complex code, but you can literally create like anything you want, but it would have to be well defined. I don't know if anybody's ever done it. I haven't looked it up yet, but for 3D, I'm pretty sure someone's come up with the idea because I'm not a like super awesome coder. I'm just kind of newbie and everything. But I have a lot of ideas, and I'm assuming that other people have had those ideas as well. If I'm not that advanced, so yeah, so that's one idea. How I actually build the sectors is right here, and it's a pretty small code. Um, Took a little while to get correct because there was a lot of bugs here and there, but yeah, eventually I fixed that. So um, yeah, so there's this one function I have called a Darwin function. Yeah, I called it Darwin because what it does is it redraws uh, the anything I want really. Like I could throw whatever object I want to redraw on it, and that's another reason why I want to keep track of where my vertex data and where everything is and what sectors. Because if I ever have to redraw something, like if something gets blown up, if you will, I want to know where that is and I want to know where it happened, and I want to know quick, because that's you gotta be able to like account for all the calculations that you might need to do. So yeah, the Darwin function is pretty much what draws these lines right here. So these well, there they are. So these lines are drawn. So I first define a line, little tiny line, and then actually I defined six of them. No, it's three of them. Sorry, three of them. No, wait, is that three? No, it's four of them. What am I? I don't even know anymore. That's three. What am I? It's one, two, three. Come on, learn how to count. Oh my God. Um, let's see. So yeah, so I create um, I use the Darwin file to create the lines here. So I essentially throw it back into my Genesis and then redefine the position vertices and then redraw the object. I know that there's a better way to redraw an object um, without using the buffer that you're currently drawing with, because that's currently what I'm doing, is using the same buffer in which I'm drawing with, and I feel like that's an issue because if you're changing something in a buffer and something is currently being drawn to the screen, that could possibly be an issue. you know so I was thinking, I've heard of double buffering, so you can have a different buffer for things that you want to change, and then once it's changed, then you can boom load it, and then then it's done. So that way it's not interfering with any drawing that's currently going on. So, but yeah, I'll implement that later. I'm kind of tired, so I don't worry. I don't even know where I am. There I am. There's my plane. I think I'm upside down. Yep, I'm upside down. Let's shoot a ray through here. Did I shoot one? No? Oh, didn't go that far. Let's do it through that one. Ah, why? When I'm angled like this. So that's the weirdest thing. So I'll be pointing at this one, but because of the distance and my angle, what the ray wants to do is shoot into the world, and it doesn't look like it's straight, but you know if I click here and I move in, that's exactly where I clicked, which is really interesting, like how that works. Most things, most games, FPS and stuff, like they have you snap to the middle, um, because wherever your view dir damn it, wherever your view direction is, that's what they use. So it's going to be straight on, straight ahead. So the middle of my screen would be boom. Well, no, not boom. That would it'd kind of be like, oh, I'm too far. Let's move closer. There. And I'm kind of far from this object, so yeah, it does look like it's a little off though, huh? Just slightly. Oh, oh, I know why. Because it's drawing to the other side. Yeah, it's not drawing to the side. That's another problem. Like I don't want it to. I want it to draw where I'm currently clicking. Yeah, it does seem like it's a little off. I'm not sure why. I'll have to look at that. But it looks like just tiny bit off if you could see that from the mouse. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why it's like that, but I'll fix that later. Anyways, that's a long video. Probably went over like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, somewhere around there. I'm gonna go grab some ice cream, and you guys have a good night.